Inis, ba bheith fechan siar héal an cheol sna seascadaí, sna seachtadaí in éireann, rud a chóirfá faoi deara lárach ban bhil, ná go bhfuil na hanúnach I ceanna atá suas a ríist agus a ríist eile. A rá anam a bheadh éon lista de mhórceoltóirí na hÉireann a se Paul Brady agus Andy Irvine. Bhí buint ag a Paul Brady agus Andy Irvine le daoine cosúla the Johnsons, Sweeney's Men agus an Bertacó le Planxty. Ba tháinig siad le chéile chun chéirnín amháin dhéanamh, céirnín ceol berta I néideag a 76 agus bí a chaint ar céirnín. Bhí sé go híomhann, bhí sé ársa agus bhí sé álan. Inis, má ghlachan sibse leis an tóric gur cáirde I sean na rudaí seo. Seo ceannas na dlú cáirde is fearr a bhí riamh agamsa ó tháinig sé amach I néideag a 76. A gcuoine uisle ag casa 33 revolutions per minute, díobhse, seo libh, Andy Irvine agus Paul Brady.
Say Arthur Marble, it's like different.
I know, it's very weird, isn't it? It is the way, I think it is.
No.
Is it not?
No, you used to go Arthur Marble,
Oh, really? Yeah.
Arthur Marble, yeah, it's almost the way you're doing it now is making it harder for yourself.
I know, yeah. Well, it's been commented on before because people don't understand what it is. They think it's something about a marvel. But
what is the first verse again?
The fame of his actions we've heard all before. Now he is challenged by young Mrs. Moore to run with Miss Grizzle, that handsome grey mare, for 10,000 gold guineas on the plains of Kilda. Is it the first verse? Come, all you bold sportsmen, and listen to my story about noble Stewball, that gallant racing pony, Arthur Yeah.
Gallant racing pony, Arthur Marble. That's what I used to sing on the record.
Is it? Come all you bold sportsmen and listen to my story about noble Stewball, that gallant racing pony, Arthur Marble was the man that first. All right, we'll do it once more.
Yeah. That's
I'll
the one.
blow it again, but
Well, doesn't matter.
Tógadh Paul Brady sa srábáin a cúnta híróin agus tá héal caiiteige sáite a gúrsaí ceol. Chuaigh sé ar scoile go láiste neamh Columba in Nire an scoil céanna ar a rastal Seamus Heaney, John Hume agus Brian Friel. Ceol Verica a chuaigh a bhain ar dúsa. Na blues, rock and roll, ceol omaláin éagsúil ó fuirt agus rialanna na ar a bheith.
I mean, I was at college before I started getting into traditional music at all. It was really 1966, late 66, early 67, when I started opening for the Johnstons in the Embankment, and James Keane, the accordion player, was also opening, doing his 15-minute spot. One night he asked me to get up and accompany him, and I had never really played behind jigs or reels before. I was doing sort of Hank Williams and Mississippi John Hurt and Lead Belly stuff. It was James Keane's extraordinary musicality that led me to the reels and jigs, and I began to see that each tune had its own architecture, and suddenly I felt that I was in this massive world of melody and tunes that, you know, it was like new to me.
In Liffey Street had furniture with fleas and bugs, I sold it, and at the bank a big placard I often stood to hold it.
The first record I made was the Johnstons. When I listen to that now, I wasn't a singer at all then. I hadn't really developed my voice. I was singing in keys that were way too low for me, you know, and, you know, the Johnstons songs were all picked to suit Adrian Johnson's voice. If you had to sing a verse in one of those songs, like the Dublin Jack of All Trades or something, like there'd be 5 verses, Adrian Johnson would sing 1 or 2, and then Mick Maloney would sing, then would come Muggan's turn to sing, but it was in the wrong key entirely, so I would go, you know, when I listen to those records now, I go, ooh.
Liag Andy Kennedy Irvine in St. John's Wood in London Hassanach. Éireannach a Behavahir agus Albanach a Air. Relishing guitar classicach a chuig sé dús bhór an cheoil. A chánig casa an scéal le tacht Lunny Donegan agus na skiffle bands sna caigedaí. Bharig sé leis go dtí baile clí golós na seascadaí, áit a bhunig sé Sweeney's Men le Johnny Moynihan agus Galway Joe Dónal in nédiag a seasca sé. Describe to me the atmosphere around Dublin at that time in the sort of like mid to late 60s. What was the musical life like?
Sweeney's Men started in the summer of 1966, and I left in early summer of 68 to go to Eastern Europe. And in that period, for me, it was largely centered around O'Donoghue's. This is why perhaps I didn't meet a lot of those people as much as I might have done, because I don't think Paul or Dónal, Lunny or people like that were particularly drawn to the O'Donoghue's set. I would meet them at things like the Universal Folk Club, and Slattery's probably about that time too, yeah.
I was attracted to playing with Andy Irvine long before Planxty, long before the 70s. Like back in the 60s, when I joined the Johnstons, Sweeney's Men were popular too, and we were kind of contemporary acts. Like, you know, both of us had songs in the Irish charts, and I knew Andy and Johnny and Terry Woods. Like, he was held in very high regard by me and by Johnny, which was kind of not too many people were held in too high regard by Johnny. And when Joe Dónal, Galway Joe Dónal, skimmed off to Israel at the start of the, well, just too late to arrive in time for the 7-Day War, we had no guitar player. And we asked Paul would he join Sweeney's Men, but he had, a week before, I think he'd joined the Johnstons with Mick Maloney. But he played a gig with us in the George in Limerick. And I remember it as being great. I remember thinking, oh, what a shame he can't be in the band.
Agus an sin, tháinig Planxty. In éon díos spóireacht faoi chóirsaí ceol in éirins na seachtaí, luan amáil ag trácht Planxty. I go deacht le Dónal Lunny, Liam O'Flynn agus Christy Moore, ba Andy Irvine duine de bhunaitheoirí an bhainne cheol sin. Dairigh an line-up in Ishes a Ríist, ag in 1975 tháinig Paul Brady ar board go hifigiúil. Faoi dhearr hir hawl, Ryan Andy agus Paul stáitse le chéile.
Dónal had left in 1973, and the band had kind of, it had lost all its engine room power. And when we got Paul into the band, we got a regeneration of power, and that was really great. But we had been in the band for a long time, and it was Liam who called the meeting. But we all knew what it was about, and after the initial kind of niceties, the meeting suddenly kind of appeared to be opened, and Liam said, well, I've called this meeting because I'd like to leave the band. And everybody said, yes, I'd like to leave the band as well. And within kind of seconds, there was nobody left in the band. And we repaired to Madigan's, and by the end of that night, by the skin of our teeth, we just managed to stop reforming the band. So Paul and myself, the next day, I mean, we woke up and it was kind of, well, thank God that's over. It was getting a bit of a drag. And then it was suddenly kind of, what are we going to do for a living?
The songs, essentially, that Andy and I had, we were singing them in Planxty. And it was only, you know, it was like, well, we have these songs, we know how to play them, we like playing together, the band's gone, but let's make a record.
Bhí áránacha, bhí buana úntachacha, rud amháin a bhí an asnamh, sa le bhétaríos tafada a dhéanamh le chéile, léireathóir. Duine a hiigach iad, duine a hiigach an ceol. Ní raibh éon áras ora cé bhí uathe. Dónal Lunny.
Ag an am sin bhí aithne gom Paul agus Andy. Bhí méid sénim le Andy bhí rinmid gigs le chéile, agus bhí club agan san Máile, agus bhí aithne gom cuid an ceol. So bhí sé nádúrtha go mbeom páirteach san Cairnín, agus bhí an ceol go háling siadam, idir Andy agus Paul. agus bhí bródar an bheith páirte.
Tá sé dechar a hiiscin cé go raibh Lloyd agus go bhí an cairnín seo nó tháinig sé amach in éideag i 76. Tá fuimeanna le chluiseantain seo nach raibh chluiste goin riamh hana. Tá an cairnín seo éh Lloydach, tá sé nua agus tá sé even. Agus ceapan hénig is le fecant ar pictúr Andy Irvine an sá, gur dás an nuan eisceachtúil seo ón irthar. Agus thug Andy leis relishing ón irthar, agus den stíl in a casan sé na tunes tá tunachar an irthar le cloisiant ionta.
It was an influence I picked up in Eastern Europe. I can remember sitting in the corner of my room in 15 Marlborough Road working that out and wondering whether I could possibly foist it on the people, you know, because it was quite difficult for it to go. It went from dum doo dum 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 dum. Well, I'm not in the right key, and then it had to go from 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 into 1 2 3 and 1 2 3. So the actual join there is something which I have taught countless people how to do, and it's really it's not easy. Like no, I don't think anybody's ever felt comfortable doing. But it goes from. Says the rider to stew ball, you're on great style. You're ahead of the grey mare, almost half a mile. If you keep your running, I vow and I swear that you never will be beaten by the Monaghan grey mare. And that never will be beaten by the Monaghan grey mare. I have gone over that with countless people 1,000,000 times as they try and get it, you know. But then it's in the right rhythm. It goes. Which is a 7/8 Bulgarian rhythm. I didn't know whether I was going to get away with that, or people would say, "Geez, what rubbish is that?" So I did it anyway, and turned out to be quite a success.
And after a false love, there comes a true love. I'd have you listen now to what I'll say. Stocha gur raibh rudéigean an genuine faoi ach bhí sé difriúil an rud fíor tradiisiúnta seanósach agus mar sin de. So bhí sé simúlteachta rudéigean bhí difriúil ach nach raibh tuí in éair nó nach raibh bhí substante baint leis agus bhí sé an tradiisiúnta ach simúil agus nua. So istálam daoine mo is istálam go fós go gcuoine muid siar an tréimh sé seagus Planxty agus mar sin de mar sort speisialta le. He looked around and he saw her coming as she rode swifter now than the wind. I'll let them see that they dare not harm you, and I'll crown my love with a bunch of green.
Just comment ar agúlan Cairnin seo gohívan ar fad, taíonn sé go mórlam. Ceantas na PC a taíonn mólam ná an leganíon an Paul Brady de Arthur McBride. Tagan an árán ó 8 nó mar sin, agus tá legan ar fáil I Limerick, tá ceann eile I Dún an Gáil, tá trácht ar ceann eile I Suffolk, ceann I Devon, ceann in Alban. A ceann áit for Paul Brady é.
Oh, me and my cousin one Arthur McBride, as we went walking down by the seaside. Now mark what followed and what did betide, for it being on Christmas morning. Out for recreation we went on a tramp, and we met Sergeant Napper and Corporal Vamp, and a little wee drummer intending to camp, for the day being pleasant and charming.
I was in America, and I was staying with a good friend of mine at the time, a singer called Patrick Skye. He had a book in his house called The Songs of Carrie Grover. Now, it was a hardback book, but it hadn't ever been commercially released on any market. It was a Library of Congress book. And incredibly, and I'd forgotten all this, but the Jolly Soldier and Arthur McBride were on facing pages in this book. And I ended up singing the two of those songs. She had the thing divided up into all these verses melodically. What I did is I stuck two verses together everywhere and half resolved it in the middle and then fully resolved it at the end of each two-verse section, which shortened it, but to me made it more satisfactory musically. I mean, this was the sort of thing which was very dangerous at the time because you weren't allowed to touch anything. You were supposed to sing it exactly as you heard it, even though it made no sense. The soldier, he always is decent and clean, while other poor fellows go dirty and mean, while other poor fellows go dirty and mean, and sup on burgoo in the morning. Now, I didn't know what burgoo was, and I've Googled it, and I think it's an American word meaning gruel or porridge or something like it, or some sort of miserable old thing anyway. So, I mean, I just changed that to sup on thin gruel in the morning. Mm-hmm. That's how I know Bob Dylan heard my version, because he says thin gruel too, and I made that up.
It was always Paul's solo, that one, as you know, and so I had the morning off, and I went in when I thought that he might probably be done with it, and only to find that they just made nearly a perfect recording that Paul was happy with, except that in the line where it says Arthur, I wouldn't be proud of your clothes, he had sung, says Arthur, I wouldn't be proud of your clothes.
Fuckle the wine. Me ceart. Agus ag nám sin the analog recording a bhí an. Agus níró ráha again ach dhéanamh rís agus bhí an take go híntach ar in Paul agus bhí sé in Farragar.
Oh, me and me cousin one Arthur McBride, as we went a-walking down by the seaside. Now mark what followed and what did betide, for it being on Christmas morning. Out for recreation we went on a tramp, and we met Sergeant Napper and Corporal Vamp, and a little wee drummer intending to camp, for the day being pleasant and charming.
And it just developed out of that, basically.
It grew from there, and
yeah.
Here it is still.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I keep using the word architecture, but I did love the architecture of the melody, you know, and how it's almost, and the open tuning allows you to play it almost like a keyboard, you know, as opposed to, you know, as opposed to just strumming it, you know.
Nuair bhíonn rud críochnithe againn, agus, you know, nuair chuí tamil hart. Ní rós againn gur rud speisialta an cearnaíonn seo, ach rinne mar ar níhil agus sin an rud i gcónaí a bhí ar siúla againn, é a dhéanamh chomh maith agus a bhéidirlinn é a dhéanamh, agus chur Paul agus Andy agus mé héin ar gríon in San Ceol, agus bhí sé life and death mar deartha, you know.
What did you feel when you'd done the work? What did you feel about it?
I think it might have been the same as I always feel after doing something like that. A sense of relief that that we did it and it worked. And very often, you know, I mean, I never felt quite the elation that about anything, about any record, that maybe I should have felt. It was always kind of a quiet satisfaction rather than go out there and scream it from the rooftops.
Come all ye lads of high renown that would hear of a fair young maiden, and she roved out of a summer's day for to view the soldiers parading. They marched so bold and they looked so gay.
I'm very proud of that record. I really am. It came at a time in my life when I hadn't become a writer yet, really. And I was in love with the whole discovery of my heritage. You know, you're stumbling around in your 20s, kind of being buffeted here and there between this influence and that influence, and you know, at the same time you're trying to find out who you are. And in a way, this record and the making of it and that whole period, those 2 years in the 70s, went a long way to telling me who I was, and I was very happy with who I was.
Oh, Mary dear, your parents' love, I pray don't be unruly, for when you're in a foreign land, believe me, you'll rue it surely. Perhaps in battle I might fall from a shot from an...
Mulligan album show, Andy Irvine agus Paul Brady amach in éidir agus 76 smaoinigh gar, na blianta fada hen. Inis, the glachan leis an album Heart Ihe mar classic, agus a hilsa níl éon tóran in éachar leis an talan an crothacht agus an alíon a thug an dácheoltóir chuig an album show. Rud eile atá sáis tríochtúil nach bhfuil le héad a rís down. Níl Andy agus Paul a dó ar fáil. Seoithe an rud atá againn. Tá sé go híomhann, tá sé go hálann, tá sé iomláin agus tá sé furas.
They used to say that this album would have been Planxty's 4th album, but I suppose it would have been great. It'd been great to have Liam on it, I suppose.
But at the same time, I mean, it would have been great, but at the same time, I felt a great sense of freedom when that Mark version of Planxty ended, and we no longer had to incorporate a whole series of practices, situations, disagreements, inabilities to come to any kind of decision, and where it was just the two of us, and we could totally indulge ourselves in making our music without having to worry about anything else. That was a great sense of freedom, and I think that's what made this record what it was. We were luxuriating in just having the time of our lives musically. Sweet old tune.
Bílinn an teachtain se chuin agus mudadal siar chuig na hochtadaí. Áit a raibh Moving Hearts i réim.
Fannagiling do bóthir írin ag tá choibh tris cúpla fóg.